All right, we are all set. So I'll shut up now and Tiera, take it away.
All right, cool. So this week, by popular request, we're going to talk about marriage and, more importantly, divorce in Pennsylvania real estate. So we get a lot of situations where there's a pending divorce or someone was just divorced, and what does it mean if they're on the note but not the mortgage, and who gets what? So we're going to kind of talk through a lot of that. The one thing I do want to make clear, and I don't think I actually put it on here, so we'll forget that for now. But I get this question a lot, and I actually just got it recently, is that if I have two people that are on the deed, but only one person that was on the note or the mortgage that was actually financially responsible for the property, doesn't that mean that only that person has the say so? And the answer to that is absolutely not. So the note is going to tell you who is financially responsible, but whoever is on the deed and the mortgage both have interest, or all, however it is, have interest in that property. So if you get that question, you're working with someone who was recently divorced or is pending divorce, and they're saying, yeah, but only I was on the mortgage, and they're talking about being on the note. But my ex-wife was on the deed. That shouldn't matter. It 100% does. So why does it matter if you're getting divorced, pending divorce, already have been divorced? It is one of the most common complications that we run across, mostly because it's misunderstood. Like the example that I just gave you, people kind of don't understand how you can have interest in a property without being financially responsible for it. Or say if you didn't sign for it, but you were married to this person and you got marital interest somehow. So whether the divorce is complete, in progress, amicable, doesn't matter. It can always have the potential to create some title issues or delays or even lawsuits if it's not handled correctly, which that is a line I have to toe very carefully. I can't give you legal advice, but there are some things that can kind of go sideways during a divorce that might kind of put your clients in some hot water if we're not careful. And the big deal here, like, why do you care, is because an agent that understands how to spot the red flags, take care of it early, and get your client on the right path, you're going to be able to save your deals and become an expert in divorces. Not that that's something that you want to do, but it's part of the job. So the general overview is that marital property, meaning property where both parties of a marriage have interest, includes real estate that's purchased during the marriage, even if only one spouse is on title. So me, for example, I'm married, but if I go and I sign your agreement of sale, just me, and I go through the lender and it's just me, and I go through the closing process and it's just me, my husband still has marital interest in that property. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I owe him anything. He can easily sign an affidavit that says, like, no, I'm not a jerk, I'm not going to do anything, this is her deal. But he has to sign off on his marital interest when I go to sell this property if we're still married. If the divorce is not finalized yet, so your pending divorces, then typically both parties still have rights to the property. So again, if you're saying, yeah, we bought this house together, but we are getting divorced and he said I can have the house, that's great. I love that he said that. But he's going to need to sign off with you or with your client on the deed to relinquish his interest in the property. Does that make sense so far? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes.
And then,
So, but if he's not on the deed, does he still have to sign off because they had marital interest?
yes, exactly. And unless they are officially divorced, there has been a divorce decree given that I can look at, then he still has marital interest in that property. Yes, absolutely. Now, I guess there are some degrees to which you could say it's not likely that this person would come back for any interest in the property. But as we talked about a lot of times, title people, myself included, aren't in the business of likely. We need to know for sure. And so we need him to sign off at the very least saying, like, that's fine. It's not mine. I'm relinquishing my interest. If not, to sign off on the deed. Because when a seller signs a deed, they're giving away their interest in the property. So yeah, that's a common question that we get a lot. And that's why I think this was a really good topic to bring up, because it is by and large misunderstood by people that don't have to look at this stuff every day like me. So yeah, unless that divorce is absolutely complete, then yeah, both parties still have interest. And even after divorce, which is the next thing, you can still have some issues. Like if the divorce decree didn't exactly tell us what to do, or it wasn't followed correctly. So what we'll look for after divorce is the MSA, the marriage settlement agreement. And that tells us exactly what to do and exactly what to do with the proceeds. So of course your real estate is going to be included in there, and it has to tell us, okay, well, Tiera is going to get 90% of the proceeds and Tom's going to get 10, or whatever it may be, or Tiera is not going to get anything. But we have to have that along with the divorce decree to know what to do. And the point of it all is always to make sure that there's no one in the world that can come back and say, oh, wait, no, that's not right. I had interest in that property. And so that's why divorce becomes a big deal there, because there's always that person. They're not always amicable. And, you know, a lot of times one is trying to find a way to get over on the other. And that's one of the ways that they could try. And so to make sure that absolutely will not happen, you either have to sign an affidavit or sign off on the deed. And then I think I kind of already talked about this, but divorce settlements may grant one spouse property, but the title has to reflect that. So this is another level to it. So even if you have that MSA that says that Tiera gets the property, it's still not complete until a deed is recorded saying that it's just mine. So that's great. That's a great place to start, but you would still then need to have someone create and record the deed that transfers it from both parties just to one. Now, the good news is if it's following a divorce, then it's exempt from transfer taxes, so you don't have to go through all of that. But you would just have to pay someone to draft the deed for you and then pay the recording fees in that county. So it'll cost you a few $100 or your client, but overall in the whole process, it's really not that expensive to do. You don't have to worry about paying the taxes on the transfer, which is usually the biggest concern for a lot of people. Any other questions on the kind of overview here or comments? Cool, moving on. So common scenarios that we come across. So we'll talk about selling first. So you're either, your client's either pending a divorce or they have been divorced, and we have to kind of dig in to see what's going on with the property that they own during their marriage. So again, if you're pending divorce, then it is likely that the title is still held jointly. If one spouse lives in the home or is handling the listing, then both of them still have to sign. So even if it's like, okay, Tiera, I don't want to live here, I'm just leaving, you do what you want, that's fine. And I can go through the whole process all by myself during the divorce. But again, my husband or ex-husband, soon to be ex, whatever, is going to have to sign off on the deed eventually, you know, to complete the closing. A pending divorce, of course, does not remove someone from title or give exclusivity as far as rights to sign off interest in the property. So pending divorce, honestly, to us, doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's something we need to look out for to make sure that everyone is signing, but it doesn't change anything because the interest in the property hasn't changed yet. And then so one red flag that you can look out for as an agent is a spouse, like, you know, someone is married or pending a divorce and they're trying to either sell or buy without the other one's consent. So it's kind of on you. I mean, we'll figure it out at title eventually, but for everyone to have a good experience, it's kind of on you to kind of know that stuff up front, ask the questions that you need to ask to figure out, is there anyone else that we're dealing with here? That way we don't get to the end and we're like, hey, well, where's Joe? And, you know, oh, I haven't talked to that guy in forever, he's not coming. Well, we're also not closing. So we have to know where Joe's at and his thoughts on the whole thing. And then if you have a finalized divorce, that's when things sort of change for us. But then it's easy for us to figure out because you will have been given the documents to just tell us what to do. So we would have to verify who owns the property post-divorce and if a deed was recorded to reflect the property. So twofold, the MSA could say, yes, the property now belongs to spouse A, but then a deed also has to be recorded. Now, you don't have to go do that outside of closing. You could just let me know, like, hey, we actually don't have a deed recorded, and we'll do that first and then, you know, move on. But it is something that has to be completed. And then sometimes the divorce decree will say the wife gets the house, but there isn't a deed, so the husband's still on title. It's going to create signature issues. So until something is recorded that explicitly tells us who owns the property, in our minds, both of them still own the property and both of them still have to sign. So the requirement to get over that is going to be the divorce decree, the marriage settlement agreement, possibly a quitclaim deed or a court order. Sometimes that'll kind of overshadow what we're looking for, especially a court order. It'll tell us exactly what to do. Or a quitclaim deed, which I really don't like. Preferably, you would still do a warranty deed, which whatever warranty that they took the property with is what they would transfer the property with, so special or general. But that's something that we'll get into the weeds with that if we start to talk about that now. So we could just talk about that like as it comes along. So a red flag for you is a seller insisting that they own it alone now, but you know that there's nothing recorded and you know that their ex is still listed as having ownership in the property. And then some common scenarios when you're buying pending a divorce. Now this one gets a little bit sketchy. I have to be careful here that I'm not giving legal advice. So I'll say that, not an attorney, not advising you legally. But so if you're still legally married, so nothing's going on here, you're just married and then you go to buy a property all by yourself, your spouse is likely going to have marital rights to that property. So again, I go through the whole process with you as my agent and I'm the only one signing, but you know I'm married. So you can at least tell me like, hey, you do know your husband's going to have marital interest on this unless he signs an affidavit that says no, he doesn't. And if your client says, yeah, but I don't want him to, let us know that during the closing process. That way we can have him sign that affidavit right at the beginning, and then it's no longer an issue. That's something we can refer back to when you go to sell. The spouse may need to sign off at closing, even if they're not on the loan or title. Again, I'm really talking about just the affidavit. If they're not looking to have any interest in the property, then they don't have to sign everything. But at least the affidavit saying, yeah, I know my wife's, buying properties for some reason. She's just doing her own little thing and I don't want anything to do with it. And then of course it could affect lender underwriting as well. I can't speak to that a whole lot because I'm not a lender, but they may be concerned or need, their own affidavit or something signed to the effect, just saying this is just this one person's property and has nothing to do with the spouse. Now, if you're buying and you have finalized your divorce, and this is where I'm kind of towing a line here, but be careful if a new purchase is made from the marital estate or like marital funds, just because you don't want the ex coming back and saying, yeah, but that property was purchased with my money. So that's about as far as I'll get into with that. And then it's a little less risky for us. We don't care for us as title quite as much, but we will always want to see the divorce decree just to know that everything is finalized. And honestly, past that, if you don't have any real estate obligations, then we don't really care. We'll just move forward. So throughout this whole thing, if you know you're dealing with one of these situations, there are a couple of documents that you'll want to ask for if they have or if they're pending. One is a divorce decree. So we want to know that divorce is complete or when it will be. Two is a marital settlement agreement, which is just going to tell us who gets the property amongst everything else, but we just need to reference our property. A court order is not a requirement, but if it did go through the court and there is a court order to be had, we need to have that so we know what to follow. A post-divorce deed. So again, you can get divorced and say, yes, this is no longer my property, but it is until you sign off on a deed. I'll give you some personal information. I've actually been married and divorced once and then married again. But this situation happened when I left my first marriage. I just didn't want to deal with it. I said, you can have the house. So no, I don't pay for it. I don't care what happens to it. However, I know that I didn't sign a deed relinquishing my interest on that property so that when my ex goes to sell that property, I know I'm going to have to sign off on the deed. And then you have a quitclaim deed. Again, not my favorite, is often used to transfer, for divorces between family members, things like that. I would prefer a warranty deed, whatever warranty you were given when you purchased the property. But again, we can talk about that kind of when the situation arises. So
I have a quick question. I hate to interrupt you.
Yeah.
So in your situation, just say, you decided I need away from, I don't want to be part of that deed anymore. At any time, can you go and say, okay, I want to sign off?
Yes.
Not that it's being sold or anything like that. You just want done.
Yes, absolutely. So at any time, yes, I could just have a deed recorded that says I don't have any more interest in this property. It has been quite some time now, so I'd have to read the guidelines again, but I think as long as you're not remarried, then you don't have to pay the taxes, which I am. So blah, blah, blah. I don't really care because I know that whenever he goes to sell, I'm just going to go to closing and sign the deed. So I don't care, or sign it beforehand, whatever. But yes, absolutely. You can, there's no, well, I moved out 30 days ago and I have to do a deed by this side. Nope, you can transfer ownership anytime. And likely because it is a result of a divorce, that is something that would make you exempt from the realty transfer taxes.
That was my next question. Then if the transfer taxes then came in again. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was actually going to stop here for any other questions. What else do you guys have for me? Have you guys run into any divorce situations? You know, another thing that comes up a lot is proceeds, because that's obvious. That's what everybody wants. So you say the word divorce, I know everyone wants every penny they can get from the other person. Normally, the MSA, marital settlement agreement, will tell us what to do, but there have been situations where the house is being sold, but they haven't come to an agreement yet because they're being catty and they're fighting back and forth because divorces just are not fun. And you can let your client know that without a documented agreement, we can't give anybody any proceeds. So for example, this was probably 2 years ago now, we did a sale and the sellers just would not come to an agreement. And so we couldn't release anything. Like, we sold the property and the new buyers were in, but we couldn't release any proceeds. And it took them 1 full year to come to an agreement on who got what. And so for that whole time, the money is just sitting in our escrow account. So we can't guess, we can't listen to one person over the other because we are entirely third party. We're Switzerland. We don't care. We just want it to be legal and correct. And so unless there is a written agreement, we actually can't give anybody any proceeds. So normally it doesn't take that long, but that's a true story. A whole year of bickering to come to an agreement on who gets what. You guys have any other questions for me? Cool. So to round this out, I'm just going to kind of bring it back to what does it matter to you and kind of how can you help? So we'll go over the red flags. So you have a seller that's acting alone, but is still legally married or has recently filed for divorce. You have a buyer that is quote unquote separated, but they're not divorced yet. So they might still need spousal consent to purchase. We have on title showing joint ownership, but the seller claims that they're divorced. Divorce decree references the home, but no deed is filed. And then confusion over who gets proceeds. So that's always a holdup at closing. So the question is, how do you figure this out without being like a nosy, nebby, whatever you want to call it? First of all, you have to. It's okay. It's okay to ask like the awkward questions. It's perfectly fine. But some ways to kind of get the information that you need without feeling like you're overstepping is, as you're going over your paperwork, okay, just to be sure, are you the only owner on the deed or is anyone else listed? Because when you say specifically on the deed, not everyone is going to, know enough to say, well, they're on the note, I'm on the note, but not the deed. They might not say that, but it's going to trigger something. At the very least, they'll say, oh no, we both signed, but now I'm the only one on the deed because we're getting divorced. And now that's a trigger for you that says, okay, well, where is that deed? I need to see it because I need it to have transferred ownership from the both of you to you. So it kind of puts you down the right path. Same with if you already know that someone is pending a divorce, just, hey, has it been finalized and recorded with the court yet? Because pending divorce, saying you're getting a divorce, signing a couple papers, but not receiving the divorce decree is not a finalized divorce. So you have to have that divorce decree that's been recorded with the county. Or you can just say, hey, sometimes we need both signatures depending on what's on title. Has the property already been deeded to just you? And they'll know, no, I haven't recorded anything else. We just got divorced. There hasn't been anything done and recorded for the interest of this property. Do you guys have any questions? Is that helpful? Confusing? You guys are quiet today. I'm just talking to myself. What's up?
Yeah, so I guess like our first thing is we pull reports. So when we pull RPR, it tells us like who's the buyers or who's the owners. So I guess that would be our first resource to then ask like,
Okay, perfect. So then you can see like, wait a minute, I'm only working with John, but there's a John and Rebecca here on your
Right.
report. Perfect. So then that sends you down the right path. Lovely, lovely. Cool. Any other?
I can say for myself, whenever I'm taking listing, even before I go on a listing appointment,
Mm-hmm.
I actually go out and check the deed that's recorded,
Yeah.
you know, and then the same with my buyers. I do the same thing. So I just think it's a good practice to do. Not that I'm doing a deed search, but I'm more or less verifying, who I'm speaking with, or the transaction itself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's part of the search that we do too. We get all the deeds back for 60 years, but most importantly is that last one, because they all have to tell a story. So if the story starts with Jim and Jessica, the story can't continue with just Jim. Where'd Jessica go? So we need some sort of signature from her that says, okay, I'm out now, which is that deed that's recorded. So yeah, I mean, if the divorce is already done or pending and you see two or more people that are on that deed, but somehow you're only hearing from one, then that's a really good indicator that you need to figure out the status of, whoever else is on the deed, because not all agents know that. So you should pat yourself on the back for having the wherewithal to go do that and to check those reports as you're doing your listings and your contracts, because we've had times where that wasn't done. And we have no idea that they're getting divorced. We don't see these people until closing. And then it's like, oh, where's your wife? And it's been me in particular. I'm like, hey, where's Jessica? And it's like, oh, I don't know, I can't talk to her. And I'm like, okay, well, we also can't close. So now I'm on the road looking for Jessica. So, I mean, everything can be resolved, of course, but just with anything, you want it to be taken care of up front. And we want to make sure we'll be able to get those signatures, at least for the affidavit, saying that they don't have any interest in the property. If not, preferably signing off on the deed to relinquish all interest. Anything else, guys?
So I guess my question is with buyers. I mean, I had one lady who was looking, and she had initiated divorce, but she didn't. After that, I didn't hear anything from her, because when you buy, obviously you can't buy until you're divorced, because so. How does that conversation come about? You know what I mean? Like, how do we ask people like, oh, hey, have you been divorced? Like, stuff like that. Like, so like what, yeah, like how do we even like come about checking on that?
Yeah, I mean, it just is an awkward conversation. I wish I had something to tell you that would make it less awkward, but I don't. It's just something we have to do. The easiest way, because we have to do this on our side as well from the seller side, is we just ask about their marital status. And you kind of have to become sometimes sort of a detective, and you have to understand their tone of voice, because I could say if I am recently divorced, I might say, oh, I'm single. You know what I mean? That there's something more to that. Oh, cool. Okay. So have you been married in the past? You just have to, it's all in your personality, honestly.
Mhm.
It's just an awkward conversation. And again, it's something on our end that we have to go through the motions of as well. But my goal is always to give you as much information as possible, so that one, you can know these things up front, and two, knowing these things before it even gets to us and being able to communicate that with your client and work through that with your client just builds that respect and authority for you, between you and your client. So we have your back on that. If you're unsure, just let us know, and we'll take it on. But it's just something that can kind of help you out on the front end.
All right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, guys? Anything non-divorce related even while you have me?
I just want to say really great information.
Yeah, that's one thing that I get that question all the time. It's always like, well, they were on the mortgage, only one was on the mortgage, which actually isn't true. Little FYI, the deed and the mortgage, as far as who signs them, have to match. If you're the only one that's financially responsible, then you're the only one on the note. That is the promise to repay. But if you're on the deed and on the mortgage, then you have to sign off on the sale of that property. Well, that's all I had for you guys today. If you guys don't have any other questions for me, then we're good. And then if you come up with anything later, of course, you guys all know, call me, text me, email me. I'm happy to answer any questions or kind of talk on the side if you have a specific, situation come up that you need some answers on. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. It's always great information.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
This was a good one.
All right.